Hey folks, Mark Scroggins with another episode of Family Law Talk. Here we have a number of other, all the male lawyers from Scroggins Law Group. Everybody introduce themselves, starting from the right.
I'm Stephen DePaul.
And I'm John Withers.
Blake Rudd.
All right, well, we were all just talking about some of the unwritten rules in baseball, which I find to be total bullshit. But
the unwritten rules of the sport itself, just for clarification.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I shouldn't say that. I kind of like baseball.
Baseball's a great sport.
It's
perfect sport.
You know, it's interesting because talking to people that are like from the Northeast, it's huge. It's like a religion up there. But yeah, it's totally different. It never really seems to me that it got much traction in Dallas.
Well, that's untrue because up until probably the late 50s or 60s, it was the sport. Kids played baseball 9 months a year. Football was the filler, and now it's reversed.
It completely has reversed. Right. It still doesn't change my opinion that it has never really caught on here as, compared to other sports.
Yeah, football has superseded it as the sport.
By far. And I think soccer is nipping on its heels.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you look at the so we just got, we've got tickets to the FC Dallas games. And in talking to them, before COVID started, Atlanta was pulling 70,000 a game for the soccer.
In fact, if you've ever been there on a game day, the mass transit, the MARTA in Atlanta, it's like being in the UK on a game day, like being a part of London. Their equivalent of the tube, everybody's wearing scarves, which in Atlanta it's not really scarf country.
Yeah, exactly.
They're wearing the jerseys, but more than that, all up and down all the trains and all the train platforms, they're singing the songs before the game, during the game, after the game.
What do you attribute that to? Because that certainly isn't the case here.
It was unique to Atlanta. I don't know how it grew there. There are other places where I thought it would be more natural fit, like down in South Florida. And my parents have lived in Atlanta for years, and I thought that having a franchise there was not going to be any big deal. But like many things in life, I was wrong. Just like when I said email was going to be a fad.
Right.
Same deal. I'm wrong.
Right. Yeah. Well, Portland and Seattle have been huge too. Huge. And I'll tell you what, they're just putting in the new Miami franchise.
Yeah.
Which is, and they've also got some other big sports figures or people from Hollywood that I think they're planning on banking on that. Yeah. So, like, they just started Austin's new team, Austin FC, and
Tennessee.
Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, he's one
of the owners.
Yeah.
Is it a major league team?
Yeah. So, and they're thinking that this is going to be, turn it into a big rivalry with Dallas, and then I think LA's got a second team now. So you had the Galaxy, and then is it Los Angeles FC or whatever?
And the second team, Will Ferrell's
Will Ferrell's one of the owners.
They've done well lately.
And then I think Beckham's one of the owners of the new Miami team.
That's exactly. Yeah, he was the driving force behind getting the team.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But don't people always want to watch the best?
They do.
And so won't we always be second tier to what's overseas? And how do you overcome that when you're only getting the best players at the end of their career when the teams in the best league don't want them anymore?
Well, so I would say, that's a great question. And so will it always be that way? I don't know if it will always be that way. But this is a big step from where it was. And at least now MLS is getting people at the end of their career. What's his name? The guy that was with the LA Galaxy is Swiss Abramovich or
Ibrahimovic. Yeah.
Yes. That dude is something else. And now he's gone back and he's
in
killing it after having been here.
He's
a monster.
He defies time. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah. So
I don't appreciate sports unless I played them.
Right.
Guys running around kicking a ball to me doesn't seem all that difficult.
What we need to do is we need to have a firm football match for money, so we can get you playing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'd have a little more interest because I never watched football or soccer growing up and never played it really much. And
I didn't either. But I kind of got interested. Well, I got really interested into Premier League and then some of the others in Europe. Really, as I have lost more and more interest in like the NBA and I'm just not into the NBA and baseball and some of the others because baseball is just too slow. It's kind of nice with soccer or football that it's 2 hours. That is what it is. You know, the clock runs for the entirety. You've got 45 minutes in the front, you got 45 minutes in the back, and you got a little bit of an add-on time. You know, that might be a minute, it might be 6 minutes, but that's the extent of the match. And so it's kind of cool that you know that's what it is. But anyway, go ahead.
You said if you hadn't played, and it doesn't hold your interest, but one of the fascinating things is how we inherit our sports.
Right.
A lot of it comes from our family. Somebody in our family played, or you grow up playing because your dad played, or your uncle played, or they take you out to play. I know the reason I played soccer or football, my grandfather, you were talking about Europe, my grandfather played for Napoli.
Right.
And so when I was in the crib, I was having the blue Napoli jersey, you know, or the onesie for Napoli, which, you know, I'm sure would be foul, but, you know.
Well, and that's the way I played baseball.
Baseball,
My dad grew up playing baseball. His mom wouldn't let him go play until he'd done his chores. And then he and the kids got together in the neighborhood, and they played baseball 9 months a year. And so consequently, he played with me. We would play catch in the driveway. And I played baseball. And I appreciate baseball because I played it. And so I appreciate the subtleties of it and so forth. I don't appreciate with soccer. But.
Yeah. So, I mean, I played baseball, and I enjoyed it when I played it. But it's so slow to me. It is not action-packed, and I guess that is, you know, patience, not one of my better virtues, as all of y'all know. And so I need something that I find more stimulating. I remember, you know, I will say that the product that Major League Soccer in the States puts on compared to watching, you know, the top teams in Europe, it's different, man. I you know, obviously with Steve's background of being a professional athlete, soccer player or football player, you know, and I'd go talking to him about some of the shit that I just seen on TV, and I'm like, holy cow, how is that even possible that they could do that? It's insane. So, so where we were going with that, folks, was really talking about kind of some of the unwritten rules in the legal profession, and things you do and things you don't do, and where there have been changes. And, you know, one of the biggest things is, you know, you try not to, as a lawyer, make things personal with the other lawyer. There should be a gap there, right?
I think I've seen a lot of lawyers who identify way too closely with their clients, and they're willing to take forward arguments or facts that are really not supported. And I think it diminishes the profession, but also it clogs up the courts. It drives up the cost. It's completely unnecessary. The other thing is that you used to be able to make agreements on a handshake. If you said you were going to do something, then lawyers would do it. But nowadays you got to have everything in writing, and then they want to pick that apart, and so it drives the cost up because you've got to do everything in writing. You got to file it with the court, and then you got to have a hearing if somebody doesn't follow through. Stephen's got a case right now where a guy hasn't followed through with what he said he would do, and so we got to go back to court. And frankly, clients can't afford all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I like having that writing anyways because it also gives me control over my client.
Well, that's a good point.
And if I make a handshake deal with the client and then a handshake deal with opposing counsel, all I have is a handshake. And we all know that doesn't mean much in court. If I have it in writing, I can take that writing to my own client, who we all know they don't always do as we ask them or tell them to do. And you can say, here it is. Here's the order. Here's the agreement we signed. It's filed with the court. You don't have an option. This is what was 2 weeks ago. This was good for your family, and now you're saying it's not. But this is the deal we made.
Well, and my style is, if I said we're going to do something, and you decide later on that you're not going to do it, then I'm off as your lawyer. I'm out. Because it behooves the client that his lawyer or her lawyer can make agreements with the other side and not have to paper everything, and to follow through to get this thing done in a reasonable manner.
I think you've got to be real careful if you're not papering stuff up. I mean,
well, you shouldn't have to be so careful.
Well, but you do. I mean, so that's just a fact, so.
If that's the way people want to do it, they're going to have to pay us to do all that.
Well, I think part of the problem, too, though, is I heard, I can't remember what I was listening to. It might have been Joe Rogan, and they were talking about just living in big cities versus smaller cities. And the point that was brought up was that the more people you add to your general surrounding, the less important each individual and that individual's reputation gets. And so as we are in a profession in Dallas, North Texas, where there's just more and more attorneys, you can burn a bridge with 20 attorneys, and you might never come into contact with those attorneys again.
Right.
And it's so you get a bad Google review maybe, but I mean there's millions of people here, potential clients. There's 1,000 attorneys that probably do what we do in and around this area. Maybe that's a high number, but your reputation becomes less and less important the more the populace grows around you.
I completely agree with that assessment, and the contrast is in the criminal courthouse. Particularly I would say Dallas, because there's a separate courthouse that does nothing but criminal. Right. So you tend to see the same lawyers over and over, and the lawyers tend to deal with the same prosecutors over and over, and you're in front of the same judges over and over. So I find it a lot more collegial than the family law bar, because you're going to see those people again and again, and you're going to have to deal with them again and again.
Well, that's the beauty of, I don't say the beautiful thing about criminal law, but what helps that is that in criminal law, one side is always the same.
Right.
Right? It's always the state
true.
versus your client. So you're always dealing with the state. Those
Right.
prosecutors probably have, I don't know what their caseload's like. It's a lot. And you're going to be dealing with those same prosecutors
Exactly.
over and over again, where family law, the two sides change.
You represent the husband or the wife or the dad or the
I want to go back to that point on agreements for a minute. I like to paper up the agreements too, but I think one of the things that it's hard to get clients to understand sometimes is whether they're papered up or not, sometimes they don't want to live up to their agreements.
Right.
And it becomes this, what I hear all the time is, I was married to him or I was married to her. She never lived up to her agreement. He never lived up to his agreement. He broke it all the time. Why can't I break it now?
So why should I live
right.
up to it now?
And so you're at this place in the divorce proceeding where the relationship's been torn asunder. There is no good faith anywhere. And in order to handle the case more, what does every client want to happen? They want the case to go more quickly, and they want it to be handled more cheaply or more efficiently from a financial perspective. The only way you can do that is if you can rebuild in the context of litigation. You're not trying to rebuild the relationship, but in the context of the litigation, if you can rebuild some of that by showing we will follow, we'll be the first ones. We'll follow through and we'll keep our agreement. And if some trust then rebuilds in the relationship that people are going to follow agreements, then things can happen, to John's point, I think, much more quickly and much more smoothly. You can paper them up, but you might not have to have 5 hearings, which is really what drives up the cost. Maybe you have 2 and you come to agreements on the other 3 matters.
And to your point, don't you want to be the person standing in front of that judge?
Absolutely.
That says, Judge, we did what we said we were going to do. They're the ones that didn't.
But how do you make that argument if there's no paper saying that this is what we all
I'm
said
not
we were
saying
going to do?
I'm not advocating against paper and agreements.
I've been in John's office. There's lots of paper.
My point is that you shouldn't have to paper every agreement. Not everything is necessary to generate a Rule 11 agreement and file it with the court, because there's an expense in that.
So give me an example of what you're talking about that you do not think is worthy of a Rule 11 agreement.
We'll produce these documents. We're going to voluntarily produce them. You don't have to request them. You don't have to send over a formal request.
But if you tell me that, I'm the one that's going to request the writing, because then if you don't follow through,
okay then.
I've got something.
You haven't worked with John Withers before.
Right.
Well, that's.
Okay.
If everybody was as honorable as John,
right.
maybe we wouldn't have to do this.
Yeah.
But man,
if I tell the other lawyer we're going to produce documents and my client backs up on me, then it leaves me hanging out and in a bad position with that other lawyer and potentially the judge.
And you can get out.
Right.
But the other side's still without their documents and without an enforceable agreement to get them.
Right. And that's, I guess, to my point is we all should be practicing law in that manner. We should all practice law in a way where we can depend on each other to follow through on what they said they're going to do. And if they don't, then they need to discipline their client or get off. And that.
And there's, that kind of leads into another area, which is that I think there are an awful lot of attorneys that do a real disservice to their clients. In the reason you hire a lawyer is for their advice, right? And the strategy
Presumably.
that they would implement to try to achieve whatever your goals are. And part of that is telling the client what is and what is not realistic. And I think there, unfortunately, there's some lawyers out there that dabble, in family law, so they don't know what they don't know. And so that's a huge disservice.
Or
to
they don't have the
client.
balls to stand up to their client.
And that one's even bigger. They've got no. I've actually heard some people espouse the idea that it's not my position or it's not my responsibility to tell a client what to do or what not to do. I just follow orders. Well, that is the biggest bunch of bullshit.
That's not a service to the client.
Exactly.
And it drives the cost up. And the other problem with that is when people start going after these unreasonable expectations, it dilutes it for everybody.
Right.
You know, and claims of family violence. We're seeing a ton of those lately.
Yeah, that's
with it. And I don't know if it's because of COVID or whatever, but too many people are willing to make these allegations of family violence that ordinarily you wouldn't make, but they make these, and so then the courts have a hard time discerning which ones are valid and which ones aren't, because everybody's claiming family violence.
Well, and I remember you and I discussed this right when I first joined your law firm, because I had faced just a stream of bullshit protective orders.
Yeah.
And you file them, and then you're forced to basically litigate an entire case on a very short timeline without discovery. And if you lose, your client's screwed
For the rest of the litigation.
for the rest of the divorce, because he can't even see his kids. So what are you going to fight for on custody? Now they're going to use family violence for division of property, and it's a way to force it. They serve you, with very little notice, minimum amount of notice before the hearing.
Trial by ambush.
And then you have to go and try the entire case without any preparation, without any depositions, without any documentation,
Without experts.
And now I have not had as much of that recently. I hate to hear that you're doing that, but I remember specifically talking to Mark about that because I had just finished a number of those on my own.
Yep. Well, and that's unfortunate. Unfortunately, there's certain firms out there that are known for doing this routinely. And
We're not one of them.
No, exactly, and never would be. I mean, if you need a protective order, by God, we will go
Absolutely.
and we will file it and fight. Fight to the death, so to speak, for it on that.
Right.
But there are too many people that it's like they are looking for any opportunity, no matter how much of a stretch, to be able to utilize that exactly.
There's so many,
as Blake has mentioned.
Yeah, there's so many incentives built into the law to encourage people to make those allegations.
Yeah, and it's a shame that A, the law needs to be changed. B, I wish that the judiciary would get more aggressive when they see some of these bullshit things done to award attorney's fees to the other, to the other side, to the defending side that was successful, and hammer them.
Right, I agree. You discourage a lot of people that way.
Yeah. Well, and then one of the things I saw was on our list potentially today was associate judges.
Yeah.
And so I have defended protective orders in an associate court in Dallas County. And you go, and it's trial by ambush, but you get them, right? You point out all the holes in their story, and the AJ rules in your favor, and you think, all right, well, what did you do? You just laid down the perfect guide for them to then come back and press the same.
Laid all your hand.
A de novo appeal.
And then there's a de novo appeal, and you've told them exactly what holes they need to fill in on their story.
And they do.
And they will. Or they force you into some settlement because they know they've got you.
Right.
So I know we were going to talk about AJ's maybe later, but I have some opinions on that.
Well, and we'll talk about that more. And so just so people understand what a de novo appeal is, can you explain that?
Sure. I'll give it my.
He is our resident Latin scholar.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say explain or translate?
Yeah, translate. Translate.
Something about new. So de novo appeal in Dallas County is the county we deal with the most. They have two types of judges, basically, right? You have your district court, like all counties, and then in Dallas, my understanding is to help with the volume of cases that they face.
Right.
They have associate judges, which are, your district judges, whether it's a good practice or not, are elected, and then they appoint their AJs, and AJ is associate judge. Most of the time, AJs hear non-final orders, non-final hearings.
Right.
And so that says, hey, look, if you come in here and you lay an egg, it's okay. We're just making temporary rulings, and so you don't have to have the top judge for that. Now, that for some reason does not apply to protective orders, which is treated like a final judgment when you go in there.
Right.
And
It's a
so
final trial.
it's a final trial.
That is really bizarre. by
Within
the
is-
way.
days of being served.
Yeah, that's just bizarre.
Within days of being served, with the implications we've already talked about, and you are. Let's say the defendant is successful. Let's say that, let's say the defendant is successful. Well, without actually having to jump through any of the hoops of an actual appeal, they just get to file a notice within 3 business days, and it's as simple as that. They get a whole nother crack at
do-over.
Yeah.
a do-over in front of a new judge,
Thank
and
God for that.
I'm
And
kind
that,
of
folks, is basically a de novo appeal.
Yeah.
It's a do-over.
It's a
Yeah.
do-over.
You know,
You had a nice dress rehearsal. You
That's
know,
right. And
you
now
can get the
it's-
kinks out in terms
Yeah.
of the performance, and then you go to the big court. And
yeah. And I personally think that if you're willing to try your final issue in front of an AJ, you should be bound by that decision.
right?
I would love to see that change come in.
Yeah, I don't see that ever happening.
Well, in
but-
Tarrant County do that because I know that contempts go straight to the district judge. They don't go to AJs.
Contempts, you mean like
Enforcement's
Enforcements?
where
Like
people can
contempt
go
or
to
jail.
jail because
Yeah.
they know one side or the other is always going to
Appeal it.
appeal it.
Right.
So they don't even bother with that. And I don't know what the policy is in Tarrant about protective orders, but my guess is you go straight to the district judge.
It
You don't-
should.
Yeah, it should. Totally agree.
It's except for this, because I had this come up just yesterday, and I had a little time between the initial hearing in front of the associate judge and the de novo review in front of the district judge, and I was able to put some stuff together that I would not have been able to put together had it gone straight to the district judge. And it was a good thing, too, because it made all the difference.
Well, that's where I think that, the protective order statute, considering how much is on the line, needs to be revamped. I mean,
Do you think there should be more time from the time of granting of an emergency protective order to the final trial and
Absolutely.
I do
Right,
too.
because that can be
Not-
within days.
yeah,
not just time, I think the consequence for filing anything that's false or frivolous in a protective order.
Well,
yeah.
You're walking
It
a
needs to
fine
have
line
some
there,
stuff.
though.
Because right now it's just take your shot, and
Right.
if you fail, all right, well, I took my shot.
But the counter argument to that would be, well, if you make the punishment of not winning your protective order or coming off as frivolous, you might discourage certain people from, because you got to understand. I understand what you're saying, but a lot of these people are already coming in. There are a lot of people that need protective orders,
Yep, absolutely.
and
Sure.
they part of being in an abusive relationship is a lack of confidence, a lack of sticking up for oneself. And then, in addition to being told, what's going to happen to you if you try to fight me back, if you throw a statute on top of that says, hey, and if you're unsuccessful and my lawyer says that,
You get to pay my
you're
attorney.
frivolous, you're also going to get popped with this, and this.
But there's a middle ground.
There is a middle ground, I
Because we
think.
go in for enforcements, and sometimes we are successful in the enforcement, but we don't get attorney's fees. And
Mm-hmm.
there are often times when things are dismissed, but sanctions aren't applied. But if there aren't some teeth to abusing that practice, then there's an incentive to abuse that practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the tragedies of abusing that practice is there are real grounds for protective orders. But when judges start to hear a deluge of cases, specious cases on protective orders, I think it erodes and waters down the real serious protective order
Sure does.
cases. And so, that's another reason why I think it would make sense to crack down on
Which
it.
you're
brings up the whole question: should judges be appointed, or should they be
Oh,
elected?
gosh,
as they
that's a
are
whole
now?
other conversation. Don't do that. Golly, don't get us started.
Yeah, well, I mean, that to me, I think is part of the issue, because the judiciary's worried about getting reelected.
Well, or are they? Because with partisan elections, sometimes they have the cover of their political party, and they're not worried about getting reelected.
Yeah.
They're insulated from getting reelected,
Well, I mean, so right now, Dallas has totally flipped,
right?
and did, a number of years back. Arguments are being made that that's going to happen in Collins sooner rather than later. So I don't think you can say that people aren't concerned about it.
I'm talking about the judges who are elected aren't
Right.
concerned about it, because all they have to do is convince about half of the electorate in their party's primary. So they don't have to worry about everybody. They're not accountable to the entire electorate.
Well, I understand that argument. I mean, I think still, this just kind of gets into my negative belief in politics in general, that if that part of the
Right.
part of the process is, as soon as you get elected, your number one goal is to get reelected.
No, I agree. I
So-
think it needs to be revised, and I think the first thing we need to do is remove the partisan politics from it, because
How does that?
You figure that one out, John. You're going to fix a lot of
a
problems.
lot of states do that.
Yeah.
A lot. We do it with our
What do
city. Our municipal elections are nonpartisan, and so are our school elections.
So you're saying judges would not run as a blue or a red?
Correct.
Correct, and that is true in a lot of
Could I
states.
add one more suggestion in on this? I generally like open elections and electing officials. I would like minimum experience requirements for a judge. If you're
Are you
gonna
running?
run,
Are you running for
You mean
judge?
you have to
Blake?
have qualifications?
you know, if you're going to run
Well,
for
you don't currently.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You just have to have 5 years experience to be a district judge.
some basic test of that you were a good attorney, you know, or at least understood the law.
Right.
Because we've all been in front of judges before, and you're thinking, wow.
This is Blake endearing himself to the judiciary.
No local judges around here.
Right. Nobody we know, right?
I had some stuff, and
When he practiced in another state under another name.
That's right. Mr. Travinsky, when he was practicing in Illinois. Yes,
what was my cousin Vinny when he
Yes.
was, yeah.
exactly. So, all this kind of gets interesting. So we were talking about all the different unwritten rules. So we kind of went over into this area with the protective orders. I mean, what other unwritten rules do you see out there, or that need to be adhered to?
Well, I think not every contest is a contest to the death.
Right.
We've got to we have to do this every day.
Right.
And so not every contest is a contest to the death. It's not a death match. It's,
Right.
And you can hit hard and knock the other guy down, but you don't have to take out his knee.
Right.
I see a lot of that where lawyers are willing to go take out your knee, and it's not necessary.
Good lawyers understand the playing field.
Right.
They understand we're arguing between these 2 points. This is what's at stake. We're going to end up somewhere in here.
Right.
I think that's an unwritten rule in some ways, because there are other lawyers, they don't understand. It might as well be pro se. They don't understand the playing field. If a client comes in to me and they've been living here for most of their life, there's a suit filed here, dad's been here most of his life, and says, okay, but I want you to get me custody and I want to be able to move away to another state or another country. The first thing I have to tell them, it's my unfortunate duty to tell them,
Exactly.
there's a very slim chance
Right.
that that's going to happen. Here are the 1 or 2 ways maybe that could happen if we can leverage this against it, but most likely that's never ever going to happen. And I see other attorneys, and this is what drives up litigation costs in here, who'll tell their clients,
We'll get it for you.
we can get that for you. We can make it happen. We're good lawyers here. Where do you want to live? Spin the globe.
Right.
We'll get you there. And it's just not possible.
Right. Isn't it going to happen?
And, John and I worked on a case together where we would enter into informal negotiations. We'd offer a certain amount of visitation time. Very disagreeable. We're going to go in there. We're going to have a hearing. Okay. They came out the first time with less time than we offered.
Right,
Okay?
right.
So you think there's a learning curve. So we go in the second time. We offer them this time. Oh, no, we're going to go in there and have it. We're going to flip custody. The judge tells them, if I hear one more word, any word about flipping custody, which isn't going to happen, it's just like my cousin
This
Vinny.
was on temporary
Don't
orders?
say another word, right?
And she did. She
Right.
said it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. But the other lawyer had his client, he had
was
prepared
willing to
expectation. I'm going to flip this custody today for you here at temporary. Not going to happen. They went and argued again, got less time than we offered again. You would think now, you do this 2 or 3 times, people will wise up and say, all right, let's see what's possible to make a deal here so we're not spending money that could be spent on the kid. But
Well, and the downside is, while the client who's trying to flip custody might not mind paying for it,
Right.
our client has to pay for it too,
too.
because she's got to defend herself and pay us to go in there.
And that's why I think it is an unwritten rule between lawyers that you
Sure.
should, yes, on this field of play, we will fight like hell. And you'll be collegial about it, we'll fight like hell, shake hands at the end of it. But we have to agree that this is the field of play.
That's,
you know?
yeah. Some of my least expensive cases are when I have the best attorneys on the other side.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree
Yes,
more.
sir.
I always want. They're
Yes.
like, oh, is that attorney?
Clients never believed
Did
that
my
either.
husband hire a good
It's
attorney? I'm like,
counterintuitive.
well,
hope
yes,
so.
I hope so.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Well, let me
I've
tell you
even-
how it goes if he hires a bad one.
Yeah.
Right, and I've even counseled clients who are moneyed, or they control the money in their community estate. You need to pay for her to have a lawyer and hope that she gets a really good lawyer, because believe it or not, it's going to go way easier and way cheaper. And it's counterintuitive. They don't believe you, but
Yeah.
you're absolutely right.
Because with a good lawyer, you're right. Both sides set expectations.
Yep.
Right.
And then if we can't come to terms, at least both sides can normally agree to this is the playing field. These are the things that we should fight over. These are the toss-ups
Legitimate
if we go
fights.
into court.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go in there, lay out our stories, and let the
what
judge
happens.
make a decision.
Yeah, set the limits of the fight.
But then you have the not so good attorneys that then want to just pepper it with all these other smaller issues that should never see the light of day.
Well, it's kind of like one of things that I like to say. There are some lawyers out there who are not going to let the truth get in the way of a good story.
That's true too.
So and that's one of the
Another unwritten rule.
Well, that's right. But I mean, so what we're talking about in this is kind of related to what has been a very viable way to conduct a defense in the personal injury realm forever. And that is, you make the plaintiff's lawyer spend a lot of money because they're on a contingent fee, so you're trying to burn them out. So now you run into some of that same kind of stuff in family law cases where it's, can he or she afford to pay the tab on something that is just going to be fought tooth and nail? And sometimes someone loses because they can't afford to continue the fight. And if you're in a modification type of situation, the likelihood of getting an award of attorney's fees during the suit is minimal. It can happen, but it doesn't happen very often.
Legally,
I'm going to put you on the spot because I've heard there is a way, right?
There is.
What is it? Do you know off the top of your head?
safety and welfare.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Safety and welfare of the
Safety
children.
and welfare of the children.
But that's not an easy standard
So-
to meet, and it depends on the judge.
And it also encourages frivolous allegations of family violence.
That's exactly
So
right.
you basically say, Judge, I have to file this modification because he's abusing
the
my
child.
children.
Exactly.
But I also need him to pay my attorney's fees to
Precisely.
protect our children.
Precisely.
That's right. Yeah.
there
And then think about what it takes to get an award of interim fees. Okay. It's not just showing that you need it. Where does it come from?
And how do you find that out? Because that's not discoverable in a modification.
Well, it depends on what the issues are. And so then when it's brought up, have monies been moved around such that you can't find a source to be able to get it, or you get a judge who says, I'll decide that at the final trial, which is bullshit. I mean, sometimes that has to happen.
So the burden falls on the lawyer,
Right.
to hang in and hope he gets paid at the end.
Right.
So that they're just shifting the burden to the lawyer.
That's right. So, it's kind of like, shifting it to, in the grocery store to the
grocer.
to the grocer.
I'll pay you when
I'm going to pay it once we make sure that all this food is really good here in a month or two. And,
Right. If I have the money.
Those cremini mushrooms were shit, so I'm not paying for that.
Right.
But, so, well, guys, this has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed this. We will have to do this again. And everybody, if y'all want to reach us, it's the first name of everybody here, at Scroggins Law Group. You can send something to info@Scroggins Law Group. Don't forget, John and Steve are primarily in our Dallas office, although they're in Frisco a lot. The rest of us go down to Dallas occasionally, but we're primarily in Frisco. But the same number for both offices, 214-469-3100. Give us a call. We're here to help you. Thanks.